97% of men will never see 15% body fat in their entire lives. Less than 0.1% will ever get those sharp, visible abs everyone chases online. You're statistically more likely to become a millionaire than to own a truly lean physique. Yet every time you open Instagram, it feels like the whole world is already shredded. So what's actually going on? Why does everyone else look so effortlessly perfect? Is that kind of leanness even normal? Or is everyone just following the wrong approach? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what changed everything for me. I dropped from 15.6% body fat down to 11.6% in just 60 days. I burned off nearly half my stubborn belly fat in that time, and I did it without wrecking my metabolism or gaining it all back afterward. The first mistake most people make happens long before they even start their diet. It's believing everything they see scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Every influencer looks shredded. Every transformation photo looks like a permanent, effortless state. After enough scrolling, you start thinking extreme leanness is just the normal baseline. But it's not. It's a carefully curated, heavily filtered highlight reel. What nobody shows you is what it actually costs to maintain that kind of body. As body fat drops, your own body starts fighting back against you. Hunger increases, cravings intensify, fatigue creeps in. Every pound gets harder to lose than the last. In one of the most famous nutrition studies ever run, participants became obsessed with food. Some spent hours a day just thinking about meals they weren't allowed to eat. Others chewed gum constantly, desperate for anything to distract them from the hunger. That study reveals the biggest mistake people make, chasing goals far more extreme than needed. You don't need 8% body fat to look genuinely incredible in real life. You don't need to live like a fitness model just to feel strong and healthy. For most people, 12 to 20% body fat builds an incredible physique without the suffering. Now that we have a realistic target, let's talk about the strategy that got me there. It started with doing the exact opposite of what most fitness experts recommend. Most coaches say, start slow, cut a few calories, add light cardio, build up gradually. It sounds logical on paper, but really think about that for a second. At the very start of a diet, you have the most body fat left to lose. Your motivation is at its highest point. Your energy is still genuinely strong. So why would you save the hardest part of the diet for later when you're weaker? The truth is simple. The leaner you get, the harder your body fights back. Hunger rises, cravings intensify, fatigue creeps in. Every pound gets harder to lose than the last. That's exactly why I flipped the script and started my diet aggressively from day one. I created a bigger calorie deficit early while my body and mind could still handle it. The goal was never to suffer, it was to use the easiest window first. And something surprising happened almost immediately. The weight started dropping faster than I expected. Within the first month, I was visibly leaner. My waist was already shrinking. My motivation skyrocketed because I could actually see the results with my own eyes. But around week 5, everything changed. The cravings arrived hard. The hunger became difficult to ignore. My body was sending a clear signal: slow down. This is exactly where most diets fall apart for most people, because getting lean was never about how hard you can push. It's about knowing exactly when to push and exactly when to ease off. And that's where nutrition becomes the real deciding factor between success and failure. By this point, I'd proven something important. Fat loss isn't just about willpower. It's about building a calorie deficit you can actually sustain long term. Most people unknowingly sabotage themselves here. They focus on eating less, not eating smart. The result? Constant hunger, low energy, and counting down the days until they quit. So the next step in my plan was simple: protect muscle while making the diet easier. The most important tool for that was protein. Think of protein as insurance for your muscle while you're in a deficit. When calories are low, your body looks for energy from somewhere. If protein is too low, your body won't just burn fat, it'll burn muscle too. That's the real reason people finish a diet looking smaller, weaker, even skinny fat. So instead of chasing complicated rules, I focused on one simple habit. Every single meal needed a solid protein source: chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, lean beef. A simple rule that works for most people: make your protein portion palm-sized every meal. It sounds almost too simple, but the difference it makes is dramatic. Higher protein preserves muscle, improves fullness, and makes the calorie deficit far easier to sustain. But protein alone isn't enough. You can still overeat without even realizing it. And the biggest calorie traps aren't the foods you'd expect. They're hiding inside the everyday meals you're already eating right now. Here's where most diets become unnecessarily brutal. People think fat loss means eliminating everything. No carbs, no bread, no rice, no pasta, no fats, no snacks, no food, basically. That approach might work for a few days, but reality always catches up eventually. Cravings intensify, motivation fades, and before long, the whole diet collapses completely. The truth is, fat loss doesn't require extreme restriction. It requires smarter decisions. Instead of removing entire food groups, I made small adjustments that quietly added up. If a meal had 3 whole eggs, I'd swap 2 of them for egg whites. If I normally added a full avocado to a wrap, I'd use just half. If dinner had a big serving of rice, I'd shrink it and add more vegetables. Nothing dramatic, nothing miserable, just small changes that removed hundreds of hidden calories daily. That's the real secret successful dieters eventually discover for themselves. The best fat loss plan often doesn't even feel like a diet at all. It feels almost identical to how you already eat, just slightly adjusted. Because the easier your plan is to follow, the longer you'll actually stick with it. And consistency beats perfection. Every single time, without exception. But let's be honest, even the smartest diet gets tested when the weekend arrives. Birthdays, family dinners, restaurants, social events. This is where most people give up completely. Fortunately, there's a strategy backed by both psychology and real-world results that fixes this. It might be the exact reason some people stay lean while others keep regaining fat. At this point, the diet was working. My waist was shrinking, body fat was dropping, but I knew the most dangerous part of the entire journey was still ahead: the weekend. If you've ever tried losing weight, you already know exactly how this goes. Monday through Friday, everything runs perfectly. You hit your targets, you stay disciplined. Then Saturday hits. A birthday party, a big family dinner, a night out with friends. Suddenly, one meal turns into an entire weekend of overeating and spiraling guilt. Then the guilt kicks in. You tell yourself you've ruined everything, so why not just quit? That exact cycle is what traps people over and over again. What finally broke that cycle for me was something surprisingly simple. Instead of avoiding foods I loved completely, I started planning for them in advance. Every week, I intentionally built in room for one slightly larger meal. Not a cheat day, not a binge, just a controlled, planned increase in calories. Psychologists call this planned indulgence, and it works because it removes the feeling of restriction. Instead of telling yourself, "I can't have that," the opportunity is already built into your plan. The result? Less guilt, less stress, much better adherence to the plan long term. And most importantly, a far higher chance of staying consistent long enough to actually get lean. But even with the perfect diet, there's still one more piece of the puzzle. Because what you do in the gym decides whether you end up lean or just smaller. By now, the fat was coming off exactly as planned, but another problem remained. Losing weight and looking lean are not actually the same thing. You've probably seen it before. Someone loses 30, even 40 pounds, but still isn't happy. Their clothes fit better, the scale is lower, but the physique they imagined never shows up. Why? Because fat loss alone doesn't build an athletic-looking body. Muscle does that. During a calorie deficit, your body doesn't automatically know you want to keep your muscle. If you let it, your body will happily burn muscle for energy too. That's why resistance training became a critical, non-negotiable part of my entire plan. Not endless cardio, not hours on a treadmill, actual weight training consistently. The goal wasn't to burn calories during the workout itself. The goal was to send your body one clear signal: this muscle is still needed. One of the biggest mistakes people make while dieting is cutting their training volume too much. They feel tired, so they stop pushing hard in the gym. Unfortunately, that's exactly the moment muscle loss becomes far more likely to happen. Instead, I focused on maintaining strength, especially in muscle groups that were harder for me to grow. And something surprising happened as the fat came off. Some muscles looked bigger, not because they'd actually grown, but because the fat covering them had finally disappeared. However, despite all its benefits, lifting weights doesn't do one thing nearly as well as people think: burn calories. And that brings us to one of the most misunderstood topics in fat loss: the truth about cardio. When people want to lose fat faster, their first instinct is always the same: do more cardio. Run longer, burn more calories, spend extra time on the treadmill every single day. At first, that sounds logical. Cardio burns calories, so more cardio should mean more fat loss. But here's the surprising truth: cardio is often far less powerful than people assume. Many people add more cardio, work harder than ever before, and still watch their fat loss stall. Why? Because the human body is smarter than most people give it credit for. Imagine going for a long run and burning a few hundred calories. Sounds great on paper, but what actually happens right afterward? You sit more, you move less, you feel more tired, you eat a bit extra, and suddenly a huge portion of those burned calories has quietly been canceled out. This is why one of the most underrated fat loss tools isn't running or cycling, it's walking. Specifically, increasing your daily step count consistently without fail. The average person burns roughly 50 to 70 calories for every 1,000 steps taken. That means going from 4,000 to 8,000 steps a day creates a real calorie deficit. More importantly, it's sustainable. Most people can commit to a 15-minute daily walk. Very few people can commit to intense cardio sessions every single day for months. And that's the key lesson hiding in all of this. The best fat loss strategy isn't the one that burns the most calories today. It's the one you'll still be doing 6 months from now without resenting it. But even with diet, training, and daily movement dialed in, one final challenge remains. It's the reason over 80% of people eventually regain the weight they worked so hard to lose. At this point, everything was working. Diet, training, and daily steps were all locked in. But that's when I ran into the biggest problem almost nobody talks about: keeping the fat off. Most people assume once they lose the weight, the hard part is finally over. They imagine simply living the rest of their life in a leaner body forever. Unfortunately, that's not how the human body actually works. Research consistently shows most people who lose significant weight eventually regain much of it. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline. Their biology works against them. As you lose weight, your body becomes more efficient. It needs fewer calories to move. Your metabolism adapts. Hunger signals often become stronger, not weaker, over time. The amount of food that once maintained your weight can now push you into surplus. It's almost like your own body is quietly trying to pull you back to where you started. This is where many people make a critical, costly mistake. They treat their diet like a temporary project, a short-term challenge with a finish line. But getting lean was never an event. It's a transition, a lasting shift in identity. The habits that helped you lose fat need to evolve into habits you keep for years. Anyone can follow a strict plan for a few weeks under pressure. The real challenge is building a lifestyle that survives long after the excitement fades away. And that's exactly what separates people who stay lean from those who start over again. So after everything, the diet, the training, the cravings, the setbacks, what's the real lesson here? It's surprisingly simple. Getting lean was never about finding the perfect diet. It's not about a magic supplement, and it's definitely not about suffering more than everyone else. The people who get lean and actually stay lean all share one thing in common. They build a system. A system that works when motivation is high and still works when motivation disappears completely. Because motivation is temporary. Life isn't. There will be vacations, holidays, stressful weeks at work, and unexpected setbacks along the way. If your entire plan depends on being perfect every single day, it will eventually fail. That's why the habits we've covered matter so much more than any quick fix. Eating enough protein, making small swaps instead of extreme restriction, lifting weights consistently, walking more every single day, planning for flexibility instead of fighting against it constantly. None of these habits are exciting. None promise six-pack abs in 2 weeks flat. But together, they build something far more valuable, a physique you can actually keep. When I started this journey, I wasn't chasing the leanest body on the planet. I wasn't chasing some impossible standard invented by social media and filtered photos. I was building a body that looked great, felt great, and could stay that way, long term. And that's the goal I want you to focus on too. Because years from now, nobody will care what body fat percentage you hit for 2 weeks. What matters is whether you built habits that kept you healthy, strong, and confident for life. And if you can do that, you've achieved something far more impressive than just getting lean. You've achieved something that actually lasts.